Myth 4. If work is omitted from my job, I just have to take it lying down. My name is David Richards. I'm a solicitor at Leith Prior, specialising in construction law. I'm doing a series of video blogs on myths that I commonly encounter in the construction industry. This one comes up every now and again, not quite as common as some of the others, but I'll try and set the scene for you. Imagine that you're a contractor and you've just won a tender for some work. Let's say it's 500 grand, decent little job. You're going to get a decent cut out of that. So it's profitable, but there's profitable bits and unprofitable bits. But taken together, you're going to make some decent money. Keep you going for 6 months. Happy days. Partway through that job, though, the developer says to you, "Sorry, buddy, but I've got this bit of work that I'm going to give to my mate, who I owe a favour to." Let's say. It just so happens that, of course, that bit of work is the most profitable bit, leaving the rest of it unprofitable, possibly even at a loss. What do? If there's no formal contract at all, so letter of intent, a quote, handshake, that sort of thing, then almost certainly the developer has no power to omit work from the scope of the contractor's job. If that were to happen, the employer is probably going to be in repudiatory breach of contract, entitling the contractor to terminate and to seek damages. If that might happen, you need to seek legal advice. These sort of things are very fact sensitive. You cannot guarantee that a certain set of circumstances in the abstract is going to allow the contractor to terminate. But it probably will. It's a really big deal if the employer removes work from the scope without the power to do so. Even if the contract provides for the power to omit work, that's not necessarily the end of it. So JCT, for example, has the power to omit work. In other jurisdictions, so in Australia, that sort of other common law jurisdictions, they won't allow an employer or developer to omit work and just give it to another contractor. They won't allow it at all. English law's a bit more flexible. The courts will allow it if the contract is drafted very carefully, but they will scrutinise that clause. So they'll make absolute sure that the clause allows the employer to actually omit the work. And more significantly, the court will assume that a power has been given for a purpose. So the omissions power is usually given to the developer for the purpose of being able to cut costs by removing it altogether. Change of circumstances, change of finance, change of design, whatever. The courts assume that power of omission was not given so that the employer can give it to another contractor. So if the employer, unless it's very, very clearly worded in the contract, and the employer removes work from the scope and gives it to another contractor, that will be an abuse of that power and will be a breach of contract. Again, probably repudiatory, probably entitling the contractor to terminate as a result. Most standard form contracts do have the power to omit, like I say, JCT, but don't have this sort of extended power to omit to give the work to another contractor. Most contractors would push back on that if they saw it. I have snuck in a few clauses when I've been drafting amendments to JCT contracts in the past. But usually contractors won't agree to that and they'll insist that it's removed before starting the job. And indeed, if you're a contractor, you should insist that it's removed, because it can be quite a big deal. You could end up, like I say, doing quite an unprofitable job if the employer's just cherry-picking bits and re-tendering throughout the process. So in summary, if the developer has the power to omit the work from the contract and isn't going to give it to another contractor to remove the work altogether, probably not a lot you can do about it. But if either there's no power to omit or the developer is removing the work in order to give it to another contractor, then there probably is something you can do about it. It's almost certainly a breach of contract. It's probably a repudiatory breach. The contractor can probably terminate, and you need to get legal advice on that. And that's it. I've been David Richards, Leith Prior Solicitors. Thank you very much.